Amahle lived a quiet life in Zomba, a small town in Malawi surrounded by green hills and dusty roads. She was a soft-spoken primary school teacher who loved her students, her books, and her evenings spent watching the sun dip behind the trees. Life was simple, peaceful, even if a little lonely. Then came Kwame. She met him at a small roadside cafe on a Saturday afternoon. He wore a crisp white shirt, a bright smile, and had the kind of charm that turned heads without trying. He said he was from Lusaka, Zambia, working in the energy sector, something about clean water and solar power. Amahle didn't fully understand it, but the way he talked, the way he looked at her, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't before. He came back the next weekend and the one after that. With each visit he brought small gifts: mangoes from Mozambique, a scarf from a market in Lilongwe, a book she once mentioned liking. He listened when she spoke, laughed at her jokes, and told her stories about cities she had only seen on postcards. To Amahle, it felt like a dream unfolding slowly. Her friends teased her, saying love had finally found Zomba's quiet rose. Even her grandmother, old and frail but wise, smiled and said, "This one is different." Amahle began to believe it too. That maybe, just maybe, her quiet little life had finally opened its doors to something beautiful. She didn't know then it was the beginning of everything. And the beginning of the end. Kwame didn't just stop at sweet words. He knew how to make a woman feel special. Every morning, Amahle woke up to a good morning text. Every night, a message to say sweet dreams. Sometimes out of nowhere he would send her voice notes saying how lucky he was to have her. He called her my sunshine, and told her he couldn't wait to make her his wife. Amahle blushed every time her phone buzzed. In a town where not much changed, Kwame brought color into her life. He would show up unannounced, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with her favorite snacks, or a new dress he said he saw and just had to get for her. Her heart fluttered every time he appeared, like she was in one of those love stories from a movie. He told her he had never met someone so kind, so honest, so good. And when he looked into her eyes and said, "I want to build a future with you," Amahle believed him with her whole heart. She trusted him so much that she brought him to meet her grandmother. The old woman, lying in bed most days, gave a weak smile when she saw them together. She held Kwame's hand and said, "Take care of her. She has a heart too big for this world." Kwame nodded and kissed her hand gently. Amahle felt her chest fill with pride and love. A few weeks later, Kwame told her he had a new business idea. Something to do with importing solar equipment from South Africa. "It's almost set," he said, "but I'm short on funds. Just a little, and I'll pay you back double." Amahle didn't even hesitate. She handed him her savings, money she had been keeping for her grandmother's medicine and maybe, someday, a small plot of land. "I believe in you," she said quietly, placing the envelope in his hands. Kwame kissed her forehead and whispered, "You won't regret this, my love." And just like that, she gave him not only her heart, but everything she had. Because when you love someone deeply, you don't think twice. You trust them. Even if, somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispers, "Be careful." At first, everything seemed perfect. Amahle was glowing, smiling more than ever, always talking about Kwame. But Chipo, her best friend since childhood, started noticing things that didn't sit right. She didn't want to ruin Amahle's happiness, but something about Kwame felt off. One afternoon, while they were having tea under the big mango tree, Chipo spoke up. "Amahle," she said gently, "have you noticed how Kwame always steps away to take his calls? He lowers his voice. He looks around first. Doesn't that feel strange?" Amahle laughed it off. "He's in business, Chippy. Maybe it's private work stuff." But Chipo wasn't convinced. She had seen him one weekend at the bus station in town. Kwame, boarding a minibus heading toward the border, suitcase in hand. Amahle had told her he was in Lusaka that weekend, dealing with paperwork. Why would he be sneaking off on a bus? "Did you ask him where he really was last Saturday?" Chipo asked again a few days later. Amahle frowned but shook her head. "He told me not to worry. It was just a quick trip." Chipo sighed. "And the money? Did he pay you back yet?" Amahle hesitated. "Not yet. But he promised he will. He's just waiting on a shipment." Chipo looked at her worried. "Amahle, I know you love him. But something's not adding up. You need to ask more questions." Amahle felt a lump rise in her throat. She didn't want to believe what Chipo was saying. Not after all the love, the plans, the dreams she had built in her mind. "He loves me," she said quietly. "I know he does." But even as the words left her mouth, a tiny crack opened in her heart. Because part of her had started noticing things too. The way Kwame avoided her eyes when she asked about the future. The messages he suddenly deleted. The weekends he claimed to be busy but left no trace behind. Still, she clung to hope like it was the only thing keeping her standing. "You'll see," she told Chipo, trying to smile. "Everything will make sense soon." It was a hot afternoon when Amahl's phone buzzed with a message from Chipo. She was sitting on the school steps, waiting for her last class to finish. She smiled, expecting a funny meme or maybe a video of Chipo's little niece dancing again. But when she opened the message, her world stopped. There, clear as day, was a photo of Kwame. Her Kwame. Standing in front of a large decorated stage in Gaborone, Botswana. He was wearing traditional wedding attire, bright gold and white, with a crown-like headpiece. And beside him, smiling wide, was another woman in a matching outfit. She was beautiful, glowing with joy. A bride. His bride. Amahle stared at the photo, her hands trembling. She thought maybe it was fake. Maybe it was from a movie set. Maybe it wasn't even him. But there was no denying it. That smile, that suit, even the little scar near his left eye. It was him. And this was real. Chipo's message followed. "I'm so sorry. My cousin lives in Gaborone. She sent me this. I didn't know how to tell you. I had to show you." Amahl's heart cracked. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. Her mind tried to deny what her eyes saw, but her chest already felt the weight of betrayal. The man she loved, the man she trusted with her heart, her money, her dreams, had been living a whole other life. Tears blurred her vision as her phone slipped from her hand and hit the ground. Children ran past her, laughing, playing, but she couldn't hear them anymore. Everything around her faded. All she could see was that photo, Kwame smiling, not at her but at another woman. Making promises to someone else. Starting a life that was supposed to be theirs. She didn't know how long she sat there. She didn't answer anyone who called her name. Her heart was screaming but no sound came out. How could he do this to her? After everything? That day, something inside Amahle broke. The trust. The love. The hope. It all shattered in one single moment. She had given him everything. Amahle couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. After seeing that photo of Kwame getting married to another woman, everything inside her shut down. Her heart felt like a broken drum. Silent, heavy, empty. Days passed, but it was all a blur. She barely spoke. Her phone stayed off. Even Chipo, who kept checking on her, didn't know what to say anymore. What words could fix that kind of betrayal? Her grandmother, already weak and sick, noticed the change. Amahle no longer sat by her bedside, no longer smiled, no longer hummed the quiet tune she used to sing while folding laundry. One night, the old woman asked softly, "Is it your Kwame?" Amahle just nodded and broke down in her arms. Her grandmother held her tightly, but the worry was too much for her fragile heart. 2 days later, she passed away in her sleep. That loss hit Amahle harder than anything. Kwame had broken her heart, but losing her grandmother shattered her soul. She blamed herself. If she had just been more careful, more aware, maybe the pain wouldn't have reached her grandmother. Maybe she'd still be alive. Amahle stopped going to school. The students waited, the head teacher called, but Amahle couldn't bring herself to face the world. Eventually, she lost her job. Quietly. Without a fight. She didn't have the energy to explain why she wasn't showing up. Inside, she was drowning. And then came the whispers. The neighbors who used to wave now just stared. Some shook their heads when she passed. Others didn't even hide their comments. Shame, she gave him all her money. He left her for someone richer, didn't he? These village girls never learn. Amahle heard every word. Every laugh behind her back. Every cruel whisper. She felt like her whole life had collapsed. Everything she had built, her job, her love, her reputation was gone. All that remained was silence and shame. Some nights she sat on the floor of her small house, clutching her grandmother's old blanket, wondering how it all went so wrong. Amahle knew she had to leave. Zomba had too many memories, too much pain. Every corner reminded her of Kwame, of her grandmother, of everything she had lost. So when Chipo suggested she move to Kampala, Uganda, for a fresh start, Amahle packed her small suitcase and left quietly one early morning. No goodbyes. Just silence and the sound of the bus pulling away. Kampala was loud, fast and unfamiliar. Amahle felt like a small fish in a giant ocean. But Chipo had a cousin there who offered her a tiny room. Just a bed, a shelf, and a small window that overlooked a busy street. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. And Amahle was ready to begin again. The first few weeks were hard. She cried often. Some days she couldn't even get out of bed. But Chipo kept calling, encouraging her. "You're stronger than you think," she said. "You survived the worst. Now build something better." One day, Amahle found an old recipe book her grandmother had given her long ago. She opened it, and the pages smelled of home, warm sugar, vanilla, and memories. That same night, she borrowed a small oven from the lady downstairs and baked a batch of vanilla cupcakes. They were simple, soft, sweet, just like her grandmother used to make. She shared them with her neighbors and everyone asked for more. So she baked again. And again. She started posting pictures on social media. Cupcakes with colorful frosting, playful names, and tiny notes of encouragement written on each box. People began to notice. Orders started coming in. Then, a local food blogger featured her cupcakes, calling them a taste of healing. That's when everything changed. Amahle named her little business Amahle's Oven. She baked from her tiny room, sometimes late into the night. She used her pain and poured it into the batter, layer by layer, until each cupcake felt like a piece of her heart, softened, sweetened, rising again. People didn't just love her cupcakes. They loved her story, a story of heartbreak, loss, and courage. Amahle's Oven was no longer just a small baking business. It had become a sensation. Her cupcakes were everywhere, on billboards, in magazines, even in airport cafes. People loved not just the taste, but the heart behind them. "Healing never tasted so sweet," one article said. Amahle had grown from a quiet village teacher to a businesswoman known across East Africa. Orders came in faster than she could bake. She hired helpers, moved into a bigger space, and started catering for private parties and corporate events. Then one day, she received an email from an upscale event planner in Tanzania. They wanted her to cater the dessert table for a luxury wedding in Dar es Salaam. It was a big deal, elite guests, a massive venue, and full media coverage. Amahle smiled when she read the email. It felt like a full-circle moment. A few years ago, she had been curled up in bed, broken and lost. Now she was being flown to another country because people couldn't get enough of her cupcakes. She arrived at the venue the evening before the wedding. The ballroom was breathtaking, white roses hanging from the ceiling, soft golden lights, and rows of polished tables. Amahle and her team set up the dessert display with care. Elegant cupcakes, tall cakes, frosting flowers, and delicate sugar pearls. The next morning, she was putting final touches on a 3-tier wedding cake when she heard a familiar voice laughing. She turned and froze. There across the room, adjusting his cufflinks and smiling like nothing in the world could touch him, stood Kwame. Her heart didn't race. It didn't break. It just paused for a moment, then beat stronger. He hadn't seen her yet. He was busy entertaining guests, greeting family. He looked older, but still had the same fake charm in his smile. Amahle stood tall, dressed in soft silk and high heels, her hair pulled back, her eyes calm. She walked slowly to the cake table and looked over everything she had made. Sweetness, strength, survival. Kwame was laughing with a group of guests when he finally turned toward the dessert table and saw her. For a second, time seemed to stop. Amahle stood there in soft cream silk, heels clicking against the marble floor, her hair perfectly pinned, her presence sharp and elegant. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. Her eyes met his and held steady. Kwame froze. The smile slipped off his face. His glass shook slightly in his hand. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Amahle just gave him a small, knowing smile. The kind that says, "I remember everything. And look at me now." He took a few slow steps toward her. "Amahle," he whispered, as if unsure if she was real. "Yes," she said calmly. "It's me." His eyes darted around nervously. No one else seemed to notice. The bride, glowing in white lace, was laughing somewhere across the room, greeting guests. She had no idea. Kwame leaned in. What are you doing here? Amahle tilted her head slightly. Serving your cake, of course. I was invited. She turned and gestured to the elegant wedding cake. 3 tiers of white chocolate and strawberry, decorated with delicate sugar roses. It looked like something out of a dream, but inside it held something more. As guests gathered to watch the cake cutting, Amahle walked forward with a microphone. Before the bride and groom cut the cake, she said sweetly, I wanted to share a little story. About betrayal and healing. About love that lies and love that rises. People chuckled politely, thinking it was part of the fun. She stepped aside as the couple sliced the first piece. But instead of a plain cake center, the layers revealed something else. Photos laminated and carefully placed. Amahle and Kwame, smiling, hugging, him kissing her forehead. Receipts folded into petals. A love letter, the one where he promised forever. Gasps filled the room. The bride looked down, confused, then stunned. She turned slowly toward Kwame. What is this? Kwame stood frozen. The room went completely silent for a moment. All eyes were on the cake. The beautiful 3-tier masterpiece that now told a very different story. Inside the soft vanilla layers were real photos. Amahle and Kwame smiling on a bench in Zomba, holding hands at the cafe, his handwriting on love notes. Carefully folded receipts peeked through too. Proof of the money she had given him, transfers made in trust. There was no mistaking it. No denying it. Guests gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others whispered loudly. Then came the phones. One by one people started recording. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" And in the middle of it all stood Kwame, frozen like a statue. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. His lies had just been served with frosting and layers of truth. The bride's face turned pale. At first, she didn't understand what was happening. But as her eyes scanned the cake and the images inside, it clicked. Her joy shifted to shock, then anger. She turned to Kwame. Who is she? She asked, pointing at the photos. Why is she in our wedding cake? Kwame stammered. It's nothing. It's old. It's not what it looks like. But the guests were already murmuring. Cameras were pointed at him from every direction. A famous socialite was live streaming. A journalist was taking notes. In less than 5 minutes it was everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. The bride didn't wait for an answer. She stepped back slowly, then took off her heels and threw them at him. You liar! She shouted, tears in her eyes. And then in front of everyone she walked out. Head held high, dress dragging behind her, leaving gasps and shocked faces in her wake. Kwame tried to run after her, but no one moved to help him. He was alone in the crowd. The man who had once fooled everyone now stood exposed, humiliated, and very, very public. Amahle stayed calm. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply packed up her tools, thanked the event planner, and walked out with her team. Amahle didn't say a single word after the wedding chaos. She didn't post anything online. She didn't respond to the media or the messages flooding her inbox. No interviews. No drama. She simply disappeared from the noise and returned to her kitchen. Baking, building, rising. While the world talked, she worked. Her business soared higher than ever. People across Africa wanted to taste her cupcakes, the ones made with truth, pain, and power. She opened 2 more branches, hired young women with similar stories, and created a space where healing could grow with every batch of butter and sugar. Months passed. Then came the night of the awards ceremony in Nairobi. Amahle sat in a sleek black dress under golden lights, her name shining across the giant screen. When they called her as Africa's Young Entrepreneur of the Year, the entire room stood and clapped. She walked up to the stage with quiet grace, her heels clicking softly, her face glowing with calm pride. She accepted the award with a gentle smile and only said, "This is for the women who choose to rise, even when everything falls apart." The crowd erupted in applause. As she returned to her seat, her eyes briefly swept across the room. And there he was, Kwame, alone, in the back row. No spotlight, no smile, just silence. He didn't wave. He didn't stand. He just stared. And Amahle? She didn't look twice. She didn't need to, because sometimes the loudest revenge is not shouting, not exposing, not even speaking. Sometimes it's walking away and letting your success do all the talking.